Welcome to the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor Brian Wagner. This week, we got the underdog, Tim Slavens, and a cast of thousands on the show. Gonna be a whole lot of fun. Tim is gracious enough to join us while he's on vacation with his crew. Tim, what's going on?
Oh, we're just all hanging out down here in Alabama on the beach, soaking up some sunshine, getting sunburnt, and enjoying the water.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I did something similar before the Norwalk night under fire. The wife and I went up to Put-in-Bay and then did race car stuff the next day, and that seemed like a really good idea at the time until I started walking around at the track quite a bit. And I was like, maybe we should have taken it a little bit easier the previous day, but it's still all good. It's always good to relax and have fun, right?
Absolutely.
So who all you got around here? I recognize a couple of the faces. Go around the classroom and introduce who you got going on here.
Well, I'll start over here to my right is Mark Tito Wardenhausen, my crew chief. And then behind him is Mike McDaniel. Right behind me is Paul Hedden. And to my left shoulder is Blaine Marsh. And to my left here, immediate left, is my son, Tyler Slavens.
So it's all the people that help make sure your car goes down the racetrack and does what it's supposed to do, right?
The only one we couldn't get here to be in the group is Joe O.
Joe, yeah, he can be tough to track down sometimes, and he can be a man of few words at times as well.
You've noticed that too, huh?
Yeah, actually, we had him on one of our other shows, and like once you get him going, he's good to go. But it was funny. I tried to get him on camera to interview him. I think it was I think it was at Wes's race, and he was like not having it. He was like, you know what, just talk to the driver. I'm good right now. I'm like, all right, cool. But when you talk to him, he's really awesome to talk with. It's like when a camera flips on, he crawls into a shell.
Yep. I've noticed that.
It's one of those things where maybe if I entice him with, like, if we just put an image of him up, maybe he'll do that. But it's with someone with Joe in your corner, it's definitely good to have him because he makes magic happen for sure.
Yeah, he's great to have aboard.
Now, it's a great segue into, kind of how I want to talk about the first subject here is, you guys were racing, I think a lot of people don't realize, long before you jumped in the radio versus the world, right?
Yes, sir. We played in the Outlaw 10-5 game for several years before we jumped over into the radio world.
Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit, because Outlaw 10-5 was my first exposure to small tire racing. The old Outlaw 10-5 freak show. Kind of tell your story about racing in Outlaw 10-5 and how you got into it, and how that went, what went down.
Mark had built a fourth gen Camaro at the time for another customer, and it didn't work out. And I was able to slide into it. And we had, this has been many moons ago, but we had purchased a Musi 706 combo to put in it, nitrous combo, and ran around the Midwest and Missouri and Oklahoma and Kansas, and thought we were pretty competitive. We won several races back in the day, and that was back in the day when the thing ran low 450s, and we thought we were fast. Now that's not even a good, that wouldn't even make it in an X show anymore. So things have developed quite a little bit since then.
Yeah, it's almost scary to think that might not even be top qualifier in Ultra Street at some events.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
To me, that's like, it's mind blowing to think about that, because like I said, back in the day, we used to call it the Outlaw 10-5 freak show, because it was, I think we're kind of we'll call them the new generation of small tire fans, are very spoiled by the performances, and they don't realize that, we'll say, back in the Stone Age, those cars were literal animals. You could have a good idea what they were going to do, but it was never, dead set, oh, it's going to go right down Broadway. It was, well, let go of the button and let's hope it goes straight, right?
Oh yeah, if it wasn't dancing down through there, it wasn't making any power.
No, it's like a pro mod. I always tell people, if you see a pro mod go on, like if a pro mod looks like it's on a very straight pass, I'm like, it's going slow. Pro mods are just out there trying to make the driver work as much as possible. That's the way Outlaw 10-5 was. People, you could compare it almost to like, sort of like, the lack of no prep, because you were trying to get down with a lot of power, not a lot of prep on a slick tire.
Yeah, one hand on the steering wheel and one hand on the parachute.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then with some of those guys, it'd be, they mix in a clutch because they like to party, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not coordinated enough for all that.
Yeah, could you imagine trying to drive one of those Outlaw 10.5, like a clutch car back in the day, what that would have been like?
No, I really can't.
Or do you choose not to even want to think about it?
Yeah, I had enough stuff with just, two things to do. I couldn't handle a third.
So talking about that back in the Outlaw 10, the old Outlaw 10.5 days, describe what that was like to be part of those formative years in small tire racing, some of the stuff you got to do and experience as a racer.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question for Mark because he was always watching the competition and always trying to figure out what we needed to do to try to gain another hundredth or two out of it. But he worked overtime trying to keep us in the show. That's for sure.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, let's talk about what you're a man that a lot of people see, but I don't think they know what you do as a tuner, crew chief, and chassis builder. I imagine that trying to get one of those cars to behave itself was a full-time job in amongst itself, right?
Right. Yeah, that it was. And knowing if I could know then what I know now about a lot of stuff, I think things would have been a lot different. But just thinking back on the data that we had to deal with, or lack of data for that matter, and the amount of power then versus now would made so much stuff so much different. And the track prep now versus what it was back then, it just I think we could have went a couple of tenths faster at least, knowing what we know now. But it's looking back, we were fast with what we had back then.
Yeah, that's the one thing I wasn't really even thinking about was the data acquisition that you have now versus back then. It's got to seem like some space age level stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, we were happy to have a engine and drive shaft speed and a G meter, and now there's 30 or 40 other sensors that we look at to put the same kind of car down the racetrack.
Yeah, that's the sensors you mentioned are crazy. Shock sensors, turbo, speed sensors. I mean, if you could dream it up, someone can put a sensor on it, right?
Yeah. And with the turbo stuff, you got transmission pressures and back pressure sensors. There's even some places out there that use a steering wheel position sensor to know when the driver screws up, but it's just in track temperature and tire temperature, and just so many. Like I said, anything you want to put a sensor on nowadays, you can.
Harry Hruska told me that he used the steering wheel sensor deal after going to Frank Holly's driving school to just kind of use it as a way to judge what he was doing inside the car, because I'm sure Tim can attest to this, that things are happening so fast sometimes you don't necessarily remember it, and then you could go back and look at the steering wheel sensor and kind of put things back together, right?
Well, unfortunately, he has more data than he needs because we always find something that I did wrong in a fact.
So what you're saying is there's always like a school meeting afterwards where Mark's going, now what happened here?
Exactly.
It's sort of like when as a manager you have to explain to your employees, ask them, walk me through this. At what point did you think this was a good idea?
Yeah. When you let go of the button, after that, you screwed up pretty much everything. So.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
And again, it's sort of like like you said, back in the Outlaw 10.5 days, it was with the slick tire being such a different animal, it really probably kept you on your toes quite a bit. Everybody on their toes, right?
They were fun to drive. You had to come back from the past, and everybody's like, "Well, that thing was out of control," and I'd say, "Was it? It didn't feel too bad."
Yeah. Meanwhile, then you go back and you look at your someone shooting video from behind the car, and you can read both sponsors on each door. It's like, oh well, maybe things did get a little out of hand.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's always funny again, from a driver's point of view. I've talked to so many on the show that will say the same thing, that inside the car you don't think it's that bad, and then you get to the top end and the crew chief's like, dude, what were you thinking? Or are you okay? Did something break?
We still do that now.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that later. Actually, I've got a question next up to kind of talk about that is, you know, your team is a fan favorite. I can attest to that because of just how people react to stories about you guys. You notice hard workers in the pits. And, you know, how does it feel for you guys to have that reputation as a fan favorite for being hard workers and being so gracious in what you do? Because I'm assuming you wear that as a badge of courage. You know, what's that feel like for you guys?
That you can kind of start getting me emotional if you make me talk about it much, Brian, because I mean, let's face it, there's not much I haven't tore up, and these guys always insist on fixing it and being ready for the next round. So there's one thing, you're hit the nail on the head when you say they're hard workers. There's no quitting these guys around me.
Oh, that again, that's something where, I mean, not to relive bad memories or speak unkindly, but yeah, I mean, you guys have torn up equipment to the point where most teams would have loaded up and said, we're done with this. And I've walked back to your pit. I'm like, they're starting the car back up. Like, this thing like didn't have a top of an intake a few hours ago. What's going on? And, you know, there's duct tape and sealant, but the car's running like a champ. And then you go out and make a hit. You know, that the fans, your average fan can really, I guess, gravitate towards that because you guys are, you know, the everyman team.
That's it's where we came from, Brian.
And nobody ever said we were the smart ones.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, you know, to see that the fans gravitate towards it, and us as journalists will appreciate. I appreciate it as a racer because a lot of people sometimes, I think that in this day and age, that do you think that they get too desensitized to how much work it is to just get these cars to go down the track?
I do. I mean, I think that so many guys and the track prep nowadays, you see guys roll off the trailer and they just go straight down the track and they're blistering fast right off the trailer. And I think a lot of people have lost perspective on what it takes to do that. And these guys that are making it just look easy now. And it's, you know, as well as I do, there's nothing easy about it.
No, not at all. And, you know, as a team, how do you guys, you know, approach a race weekend when we'll say the car is out of the box, ready to go, you've done your homework and it's ready to go? You know, how do you guys, being, you know, the everyman's team, how do you approach that race? Do you do a lot of testing before the event when you're available to? You know, what's your guys' order of operations and how you get ready?
We try to test as much as possible when, you know, time and scheduling allows. I think it was early last year. I think when we started, we probably put 100 or better test passes on the car. And from the time we went from the transition from RVW to Pro 275, so that we knew we had a good baseline when we came out on the 275, that we wouldn't just be completely out in left field, just to kind of, as Tim said, make it look easy, but all the stuff behind the scenes nobody sees, and nobody sees the struggles that we went through. I mean, we tried different wheel widths and just crazy stuff that people wouldn't think of. That way we wouldn't have to do it when we get to a big race.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans and maybe even some racers that don't necessarily run in that, you know, the radial or really fast car stroke will understand that the racers, when you make that transition, even if you're just running in a class like Radial versus the World, you're always trying new stuff. And you want to be ready when you get to the track, because when you get there, then it's a matter of you've got to be ready to adjust to the current conditions, right?
Correct. Yeah, we can test and test and test in, you know, mine shaft air conditions and flypaper racetracks, but then when you get to a racetrack or, you know, a race where it's hot and the track isn't as good, you know, you have to have some sort of data to go back to. And that's why when we try to test in all kinds of different conditions.
And I think another cool thing to pull the curtain back on is once you're at the track and testing, and, you know, you've got, you know, qualifying on one day, and then you've got to kind of go into race mode, but you've got testing beforehand. Do you guys just try to like get a good idea what the car is going to like, the conditions, and kind of set yourselves in there before you really go into either swing for the fences or race mode?
Yeah, it's pretty rare for us to swing very hard. You know, we try to, we've got the mindset that you can't win the race unless you win the first round. And, you know, you have to win rounds before you can win a race. So we don't try to be heroes every pass unless it's a final or, you know, unless there's something big on the line for it. So we try to take baby steps as far as being too aggressive.
And that kind of leads me to another question for you, Tim. You know, it's you earned the nickname Underdog. It was funny because a lot of people, you know, they didn't know about that maroon Camaro. And then it was like all of a sudden you guys, it was like it clicked. You had it figured out and you started chopping heads and started winning rounds. What was that like for you as a driver to be able to start kind of getting that I guess, you know, hitting street confidence? What was that like?
Well, it was kind of surreal as it happened, and even living in the moment, it was hard to wrap your mind around. We went from rolling into the staging lanes and being just excited and giddy that, you know, we get to go down the track besides, you know, some of the best names in the business, Stevie Jackson and the rest of those guys, and just being in the lanes next to him was an honor, to the point where, you know, when we were in the lanes or in the lane beside him, that we had a legitimate chance of winning. So it was kind of, it was very humbling, honestly, to be in that position, to now be considered a contender versus, you know, a field filler.
Yeah, and that's always interesting to go through that transition. I've been on a team where we made that transition where, you know, where you were hoping to be in the show or, you know, be competitive, to all of a sudden it was like people are paying attention to what you do. And it's a good feeling, isn't it, to know that now that people consider you a threat?
It really is. You know, back to the Outlaw 10-5 days, we used to go to Orlando every year to the World Street Nationals and run an Outlaw 10-5 down there. And when we went down there, our only goal was to make it in the show. And that was a 32 car show, you know, so we were tickled to death if we made it in the show. And if we happened to win a round, oh my goodness, you know, we were celebrating like we'd won the World Series. So, but to change to go from then to now is, you know, it's sometimes you got to be careful because you lose sight of that. And then you, kind of what I said a while ago, you forget where you came from and how hard you've worked to get there and how easily you can lose it.
And it's funny, as different drivers have different, I guess, levels of concentration when they're in the car. Some guys, like, they only see what's between the pillars and that's it. They don't see the crowd. Other guys could say, oh, I saw you standing along the wall taking pictures during this round, which I find fascinating. What this kind of goes towards is, you know, you see the guys betting up on the starting line. Do you get to see him now pointing at you with the money versus the other lane now? You know, what's that like?
Yeah, I do try to avoid getting caught up in that kind of hype and just, you know, trying to do my job, not let the team down kind of thing. So, but it's real easy, you know, you're rolling into the burnout box in Georgia and the people part like you're driving through the waves kind of thing. And it's there, you can see the excitement on their faces and what's going to happen. And, so it's really easy to lose focus and forget what I've got to do, but I try to just maintain my job, let go of the button, keep it in my lane and pull the chute. Mark will tell you I never pull it on time, but I always pull it. So. Actually, tell you I don't let out of the gas on time. I pull the chute on time.
When you roll up, did you get hyped up? Do you get excited? Because some racers are like bouncing off the walls. Other guys are like ice in their veins. You know, what's your mental state when you get ready to do your job?
I feel like the majority of the time I'm pretty cool, calm, and collected. There's been a few rounds that, you know, I would say got me worked up and I was ready to go on kind of thing. But you know, there's certain guys you roll into that up, light the bulbs that you better be up on the wheel from the time you let go of the button until the time you pull the chute, or you're not gonna win, kind of thing. So, but for the most part, I think I keep my cool fairly well. I'm kind of, my kids have raced junior dragsters for years as they grew up, and I was always on them about, you maintain a routine from the time you get in the car to the time you get out of the car. You don't miss something. Stay cool, calm and collected, stay focused on what you've got to do. I mean, we're here to do a job. So let's make sure we do our part to do it right.
It's funny you mention a routine, and it's one of those things where I feel honored. I like to watch racers, kind of what their routines are and what they do. And, recently at a couple of the NHRA national events, like Leah Pruitt's, throwing out elbows, fist bumps. And I thought she was going to give one of her crew guys a DDT. Like, she's fired up and ready. John Force does like a pilot's deal where he walks around the car, he smacks the parachute, looks it over. What's your like pre-flight ritual to get ready to go insanely fast in a door car?
Well, Mark's usually up looking at the track, taking care of business up on that end. But these guys here with me, we all do our little thing before as we're in the staging lanes and rolling up, and I'm getting my safety gear on, etc. Once I get in the car, everybody has their specific job. And these guys, I trust these guys with my life. So in empowering them to do that each time, I'm safe. I feel safe when I let go of the button. I know they've done their job, and I know they're as focused as I am.
And I think that's why I think it's awesome you have your whole crew here, because again, it demonstrates that it literally, like, some of us, we only be like a onesie or twosie kind of team, but when you have a whole crew there, it's I tell people it's like you're a fighter, you're a boxer, an MMA person. You're going to the lanes with your team, and everybody's focused and has their job and what they do. And it's all those little parts that kind of make it happen. Is that something that you guys really enjoy as a family and as a team, is making it all come together after a pass like that?
Oh, I think that's where these guys could answer that. I mean, I think they get probably as excited or more excited than I do that when we have a successful round. Those round wins are hard to come by. So it's exciting when we, get all of our ducks in a row and the win light comes on at the other end, and I didn't destroy the thing, so nobody has to kill themselves to have it ready for the next round, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's always good. I tell people when you can put it back in the trailer, it's not knocking, smoking, or banging, and all the body panels are there. It doesn't have to go to the chassis shop. It's a good day. But there are days when some of those things happen and you got to turn it around and come back and race again, where again, it's good to have a crew that can settle into that. And it's not like a million people panicking, not knowing what to do. Everybody knows what to grab, what to do, and they can be leaders as well as being coached into what to do.
It's kind of, we're not professionals, but we kind of are professionals, because when we have those catastrophic moments and hurt the motor or the transmission or body parts or whatever, it comes back to the trailer. These guys just get on it, and there's not a lot of dialogue. Everybody knows what their role is, and it just happens, and it comes together. And next thing you know, you turn around and the thing's ready to go to the lanes.
Yeah, the thing you said there is it shows what it takes to have a cohesive unit there, because I've been a part of those thrashes too, where it's not like a lot of chitter chatter. It's, the crew chief telling you who to do what, and things just get done, and magically the car's ready to go. Well, I shouldn't say magically, just it happens.
They're eating a cheeseburger.
Do what?
And the whole time the driver's over there in a chair eating a cheeseburger.
It could be a hard job sometimes, signing the autographs, kissing the babies and doing that whole deal.
I didn't argue with what he said.
Well, answer me this. Is it one of those situations, you can answer this, Tim, where sometimes it's best where you don't put hands on the car because you might cause more chaos than what needs to be done?
It might have been once upon a time where it happened, yes.
Everybody's got their own talents and jobs, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to think so. I mean, I tear it up, they fix it.
Yeah. And that's what's awesome is just, seeing all you guys laugh about it, because it's the truth that, that there are times where I have seen literally where a crew member or a crew chief will tell the driver, just go do something, go pack the chute, go put air in the tires. You're gonna.
You don't even do that. Go eat a cheeseburger. That's it.
The only thing I'm really qualified to do is eat, and you can tell by looking at me, I do that pretty well. So,
but you're also qualified at making sure you let go of the button and doing the job, right?
Well, I hope so. They haven't fired me yet, but there's still time.
I tell people I'm a YouTube certified mechanic. Are you a YouTube certified driver? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I read that whole book, Drivers for Dummies or Dummies for Drivers or however it works.
Well, you're a YouTube certified semi-professional.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I tell people. I'm like, listen, I can't give legal advice. This is how I might do it. Things might or might not go right. Please use as directed. Good luck and Godspeed.
Yeah.
Well, we got to take a quick commercial break here. When we get back, I got another fun question I'm going to tee up here about records and what it means to set those. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back here on the Dragzine Podcast.
Founded in 1981, Dart is celebrating its 40th anniversary. To provide extra reliability in high-stress LS engine applications, Dart founder and much-honored engine builder Richard Maskin designed a fully counterweighted billet steel crank. With 8 counterweights instead of the normal 6, it can comfortably handle power adders. It's available in a stock 3.622-inch stroke or a 4.000 stroker model. Call 248-362-1188 for more details.
All right, we're back here with Tim Slavens, and we've been having a lot of fun ribbing each other, seeing the crew get their chuckles and talking about jobs and whatnot. Now, I remember what we're going to talk about next very well, because I got to interview you about this afterwards, and I've seen a lot of pictures that you set and held the radio versus the world record in what looked like a body correct Camaro. That was a very emotional moment for you guys, setting the record across the board. The picture that Chevelle Robb took of, you and Mark embracing, and then when you talked about it, you got very emotional. Take us back to that moment when you knew you set that record. What was that like?
That was just, we were in one of those runs where for the 2 or 3 events leading up to that and the testing leading up to that, things were really starting to click. The car was really responding to Mark and Joe's, honestly, some of it was just trial and error, because we were at the point where the thing was, pretty fast. So clicking numbers off left and right, and it was picking up mile an hour. And we roll into that event, and it just it was one of those where usually we don't unload a car that is the same one that we loaded it, whether we were testing or racing. So we kind of have to, line the dots again once we unloaded. But right off the trailer, it was working that week. We rolled into that night, and I think we made the first lick, and it was a mid 60, I believe it was 64, 65 kind of thing. And I seen the glimmer in Joe and Mark's eyes as they were on the laptop, and I'm like, I think we're in for something exciting here, kind of thing. So, and I've kind of gotten used to the fact I used to always ask Mark, when I'd get in the car, what'd you put in it? And I've kind of gotten used to the fact I don't ask anymore, because most of the time he won't tell me anyhow. So, but, we went up to that round, and it's just the air. It just, it was one of those scenarios where things came together. Conditions were good. The car was right. The track was on kill. And it was almost from the time I let go of the button, I knew it was on one. Everything was great. That was definitely a pass where I drove it way too far, because I was celebrating as I drove by the lights, kind of thing. So I just wanted to see how many RPM the Hemi would turn, but it was phenomenal. And then we came back out the next morning, and we basically backed it up within 0.003 of a second, I believe. So we proved that it was legit. It wasn't a hot dog wrapper pass. And, just extremely proud of everything that went into getting to that point.
And that's what I like. I remember that, and just seeing like the way your crew was handling it. It was like you said, it was like you could feel it coming. And as a driver, is it almost kind of worrisome or terrifying when you see Mark and Joe like licking their chops? Like, are you sitting there going, all right, I better make sure I pull this belt a couple extra clicks tight, because these boys have probably stuck a rocket under me.
Yeah, and the fact that there again of ensuring that I do everything right, stage it as shallow as possible, and drive it as straight as possible, and don't do anything to cost us any numbers out there. So yeah, I was sweating a little bit, but I also knew that it was going to be good. The car was just working really well at that point in our game.
And I think, like you said, you just mentioned doing your job and what you have to do to get it down the track. Is that, again, you get spoiled thinking that these heads-up cars are just sledgehammers of horsepower and they will just, drive through anything. There's still a lot of stuff that you have to do to make sure that a run like that, or any run for that matter, gets as much as it can, because you have to hit the shift points, right? You got to keep it straight, because these things will, those little blips can cost a lot of ET, don't they?
They can. We made a very similar pass in Bradenton just a few weeks before that run. That was probably equal to that, if not a little quicker, to be honest with you. But it got out in the middle, and I let it get away from me, so to speak. And I probably drove, one of those where you drive 700 feet to get to 660 kind of deal. And I know that it cost us, because after looking at the data later, it probably should have been as quicker than our record run in Georgia.
And you've been fast on slicks and you've been fast on radials. What's the difference between the two after you've been, as quick as you've been on both? What's the feeling? What's the difference?
The radial car is so much, I hate to say a 360 car is easy to drive, but the radial car is so much easier to drive than a slick tired car. If it makes it that first 60, 100 feet, you're probably in for a ride kind of thing. And the radial car, the slick tired car, it's, once it gets up on the tire out there and it's dependent on the sidewall to carry it down through there, it's shaking, rattling, rolling kind of thing. And there's just a lot of drama all the way to the finish line, where the radial car is so much smoother to drive.
And then, a turbo versus a nitrous car are always two different things as well, because the nitrous car, you're trying to smash that thing in the face as hard as you can right off the hit. The turbo car, you're trying to get at the back half, right? So that's got to be a little bit of a different sensation.
Yeah, the first time I ever drove a turbo car, we were just trying to get used to it kind of thing, and it's trucking down through there, and it ran, the very first time I ran out the back, it had 25, 30 mile an hour on my old nitrous car kind of thing, and you don't even know it, because the horsepower is so smooth out there. And I just dumped the gas at the other end like I would my old nitrous car, and the old front end was still trucking up in the air, and it bottomed out when I let out of the gas, just dumped it, and it was all kinds of squirrely at the other end. And I was like, holy moly, I've got to pay attention to what's going on in this deal.
Yeah, little bit of a different sensation, right?
Yeah, the old nitrous car, if you made it, it was all in to 60 foot. So if it made 60 foot, the rest of the pass was, just along for the ride. But the turbo car is just getting started there.
Yeah, it's funny to hear the different power adders and how they add, like the nitrous car kind of take off and lug down. And to me, it's always interesting to hear a turbo car make a quarter mile pass, because a lot of times it's like at the 8th mile, it's just winding up and getting ready to try to knock it out of the park at the back half. And anybody that's driven a turbo car, the full quarter mile, especially a fast one, will tell you that last half the track is when things can get weird in a hurry, right?
I can tell you that we haven't honestly ran this car quarter mile. So we've ran it when we were testing, we ran it to 1,000 foot a couple times.
Really?
And, I've never pushed it all the way to the 1320, but there's a noticeable difference between the 660 and the 1,000, I assure you.
All right. Reasonable question asked then. Do you have any desire to try to make a full quarter mile pull in a turbo car?
I do. The question has always been, how far do you push a stock parameter diameter 69 Camaro. Do you want to push a 69 Camaro in stock configuration to 250, 260? I'm not sure of that.
Yeah, that definitely could have some implications, because I remember when Fiskus and Kluger, set the radial record in the quarter mile up at the World Cup, and Kluger had the car got squirrely at the top end, and he said, "I got kids. I'm not making another hit." And Fiskus was like, "Oh, I'll keep doing it." And Cartuccio, when he was doing it, you talk to David Adkins, anybody that's pushed a turbo radial tire car the full length of the back half of the track will all tell you the same thing. It gets weird in a hurry, and not a fun kind of weird at times.
I'll take their word for it, but in a properly set up car with a little more aerodynamics, I think I'm up for it. Everybody always says that, right? It's easy to be a keyboard warrior. So yeah,
it seems like a good idea at the time until you're at the point where you're realizing, well, this was not what I expected in a bad way. It especially, like you said, a 69 Camaro that's keeping the stockish dimensions, that was definitely not drawn up at GM to go that fast.
Not likely. The only thing that we had of any aerodynamics at all was the little wicker bill on the front end. Everything else was a 100% stock with just a little wing on the back of it. So it's pretty amazing that it held up to the eighth mile stuff.
And that's going to bring us to our next question, which will be interesting to talk about this subject, is you've gone for some wild rides in radial tire cars. Describe what it's like. We talked about when things go right. What's it like to be inside one of those cars when things are not going right?
Well, it's no secret that I've wadded that thing up more than once. Mark was tired of working on it, that's for sure. But the radial tire is so unforgiving once it spins, kind of thing. And learning the limit of that, on a slick tired car, the first thing you want to do is walk the gas, pedal it, get back after it, kind of thing. And the slick will recover, but the radial, there's a pretty slim chance that it's going to recover. So, and then when it starts spinning, it's the weirdest thing. I can't really describe how crazy it feels in the car and how helpless you feel as far as in control when it starts spinning.
Well, not just spinning. I mean, you've taken flight, what, once, twice?
Maybe gonna not talk about that.
I mean, you're the only radial racers that's made a NASCAR race. You got to look at it that way.
That's true. That was, that was just a series of unfortunate events. The car was doing what it was supposed to, and everything was going right till it wasn't, kind of thing. It carried the front end just a little bit. The wheelie control caught it, set it down, and then the old bounce, kind of thing. And then the power comes back in it at the same time. So it was all good till it wasn't. But boy, when it bounced and the power shoved back in it and it started back up the second time, it was pissed off. And I knew we were in trouble. That's when I pulled the parachute, when it started up the second time, because I knew it was just not going to be good.
Which is probably the number one thing that kept that from turning into a 10 times worse situation. And we've seen that with other drivers too, that, the first thing is you go for that shoot, whether it's wiggling or trying to do whatever, because it will work miracles. And I remember the gentleman, I forget his name, years ago, one of the first guys that when I was at Lights Out that did the whole, went through the traps, completely vertical, the parachute strap tripped the timing beam. And I asked him, I'm like, what was that like? And he said, when things get quiet in these cars on the track, something bad's happened. He said, shit got quiet for a real long time and I got worried. Is that what it was like as you were sailing through the air?
That's exactly what it was like. And I'm sure, as the other guys have told you in the past, that it's amazing how things slow down too. And you have time to, it all happened, was over in 3 seconds, but it felt like it took, 10 minutes kind of thing. Because the things that go through your mind and the conversations you have with yourself it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, the worst things I've ever experienced was, my street car decided it wanted to try to make a left-hand turn on its own. And that scared the bejesus out of me because it, never done it before. No, all of a sudden you're looking at the opposite wall. And like you said, things slow down and you're trying to do what you think is the right thing. But I still had steering and control. You were a pilot without a rudder, without accelerator, you're just kind of, you're like a sailplane, right?
Yeah, it really was. It got up there, and when it got straight up, basically, I lost my place in the track, and I thought it was going to come down on the right-hand wall. So I was just expecting that very abrupt landing on the wall, and I knew if it hit the wall, it was going to start rolling. So I was trying to brace myself for that. And then the next thing, to the emotional side of it again, was my daughter was due to get married in 2 weeks. And I thought, I'm going to be in the hospital in Georgia and miss my daughter's wedding. But, good Lord says, nope, you're not missing it. So the thing set back down the way it was supposed to, kind of. And as soon as it hit the ground, I was like, now I'm looking at the wall and I'm in the center of the track. So let's see if we got steering, because I figured it probably broke the steering on it. But nope, it steered. So, okay, let's try to keep it off the wall for good now. And then the hillbilly in me, quite honestly, said, hey, this thing's still rolling. Let's drive it off the end of the track. And just for a split second, I thought, I'm going to drive it off the end. And then I thought, no, it's probably leaking out of every orifice on it. So I better pull it over, get it stopped so I don't destroy the track for everybody else. So, at that point, she stopped and I'm out of the car. And, obviously the crew and everybody else was scared to death, worried to death kind of thing. And everybody at home, the family, et cetera, et cetera. So then you got to try to get everybody calmed back down kind of thing that, it's going to be okay.
And it's funny, you say stopped, but that's not where the story stopped. This is
no, that's actually where it began.
Yeah. It's like one of those scenes where it's like, you might wonder how we ended up here, but let's go back. At what point you guys, you drag the carcass of the car back, and again, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and you sit there and you look at it. The crash we had, we're like, all right, this thing can't be, like, people like, you should fix it. We're like, no, this isn't fixable. Who was the first person in your pit that said, let's try to fix this thing and make a hit?
Well, to be truthful with you, we got the thing back to the pits, we roll it in there, and it's sitting literally on 3 wheels. The left rear wheel wasn't even touching the ground. It was so whopper jawed, for a technical term. And Mark and Joe walked around it, looked at each other and said, yep, it's done. And went in the trailer. And we're kind of, starting to pick up our stuff and pick up our bottom lip and so on and so forth. And they come out in a few minutes. Mark says, get it up on the jacks. From that point, it's Mark's story. That's where I went to eating cheeseburgers.
So Mark is the chassis guy. I've been in the situation where we sent a car into low orbit. You guys went into high orbit. We only went into low orbit and figured it was fixable. You guys, tried to go full SpaceX. When did you realize, oh, we can fix this?
It was only Wednesday. So I knew if we had to work on it for 2 hard days, these guys behind us here, will do everything that they're told and then some. So then I had to get it in my mindset of, what do I need to have these guys do, or how do I need to have them do it? And we started taking some of the bit and broke pieces off of it. And then it wasn't really that bad. So some of the stuff I knew we were going to have to try to find some parts for. And, we had a lot of people offering parts and help. I think Phil and Stevie were one of the first ones to come over and say, hey, anything you guys need out of our trailer, it's yours. So back to that whole, what you were talking about earlier is, we've earned enough respect from some of these guys that we're not just nobodies anymore. We're, hey, these guys are awesome guys. If they need some help, we have it. We can, help them out if we can. So knowing that we had people like that were going to be willing to help us made it that much easier. So then it was just nuts and bolts and grinding and cutting and welding and, you know, pulling on this and pulling on that. I had some guys back home that made and overnighted me some parts to fix stuff for the next day. And I think it was 32 hours from the time it landed to the time we made our next pass. So to get all that done in that amount of time was pretty dang awesome.
So if this was a fancy show, we'd do like an 80s montage of you guys working on the car, pictures and video, but unfortunately we don't have that. So we'll have to have the people at home put that 80s montage in their mind. Fast forward, we're in the staging lanes. Tim, you're belted in. In your mind, what are you thinking as you're getting ready to fire this car up? Are you thinking this is going to be awesome? Or are you going, man, I hope these guys tighten everything up right? This thing, you know.
So there's one thing about this guy beside me. I knew it was safe or he wouldn't have sent it to the lanes. So, but it's still kind of funny, parts of it. Because, I mean, he literally set the 4-link and the anti-roll while we were in the staging lanes waiting while I'm buckling up kind of thing. And the thing that was the funniest, I'll just tell on us, but, you know, there's like a million people on the starting line because everybody wanted to see whether the thing was going to, you know, leave the starting line or hit something or what it was going to do. So I rolled into the burnout box and did the burnout, and I'm backing up, and he gets on the radio and goes, well, it went straight. That's a good sign. So it kind of chuckled, but at that point I'm like, I knew it was good, you know, and the whole idea, they told me just run it to the 330. Let's make sure it doesn't do anything stupid kind of thing. But at the 330, the thing was really trucking, and I really hated to lift. So in true fashion, I drove it a little past the 330 before I dumped it. But I mean, it was perfect, straight as an arrow, did everything it was supposed to do. It was one of those passes where I hated to lift because it was on a mission.
And, you know, watching that from home, I kind of was like cheering and hooping and hollering when you guys made it into the show, because it was like, holy cow, these, you know, and it was like these guys just did something that not a lot of people can do at that level. And to see the car do that, and, you know, it's almost like, you know, it's the Cinderella story, or, you know, how far, like they got over that bump. How far are these fools going to go? They're going to win this whole thing.
Well, we didn't get quite that fortunate, but that's kind of back to our story a while ago about getting it fixed, getting it down the track, getting in the show. At that point, I mean, the car still needed some TLC, obviously, but just getting in the show, being ready for first round was a major win for us. It was kind of one of those pride things. Didn't really matter to everybody else, but to us, it mattered to have it together and make it to the starting line, and it ran, you know, pretty respectable afterwards. So it was just one of those pride things for us.
I mean, you know, like you said, you guys have wheelied this thing. It's, you know, it's been cooked a couple times. You've, you know, shot injectors at unwilling media people. I mean, it's definitely, you know, you guys are very versed in getting a car fixed. So it was a matter of you know, once I heard that you guys are doing, I'm like, if they think there's a glimmer of hope, this thing's going to get fixed and get rolling, because they have literally taken this car apart and put it back together so many times that it's just a matter of if they have the parts, it's going to happen, which I'm sure that was kind of the feeling you guys had as well once it got rolling.
Yeah, like I said, there was the parts that we'd gotten from guys at the track and the stuff that guys had overnighted me. There wasn't anything that was, this is close enough, or this will just have to do, because, you know, we did our best to make sure everything was right. You know, there might have been one or two little things that was like, yeah, that's good enough, but it wasn't anything that was super important. So it was, you know, like cosmetic stuff on the front end, you know, with the front end sitting on the car, you could see it was sitting a little crooked, and it's like, it's just going to have to do. It's at least on the car. So we went with that.
Function over form, right?
Yeah.
and you know, again, it's being the fly on the walls. I've seen teams have to overcome adversity before, and one of the best lines I ever heard was the car the team that we won't name, they tried to get it down the track and it didn't make it to 330, but it went kind of straight. You know, you could tell they're like, oh, we got some workout for us. And one of the crew guys turned and looked at me and said, well, at least they didn't catch on fire this time, and like walked right back. I'm like, that's the sign of a true racer right there. When it's like your least worries, well, it didn't catch on fire, we can fix the rest. I always come back to it. I'm like, there's something mentally not right with us as racers and crew guys, that we put ourselves through sleep deprivation experiments and exposure to extreme conditions to spend the least amount of time on the track as possible. You know, at least the circle burner guys, they get to do it for a while, right?
Right.
So we're going to take another quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to hit the home run of the show, talk about some more radial tire stuff a little bit more here on the Dragzine Podcast.
Whether you'd like your ride to rumble down the road or roar down the racetrack, Flowmaster has the perfect exhaust system for you, with direct fit options for classic and late model cars, trucks, and SUVs, to race-oriented, high-flow systems, fabricated ready tubes, flanges, and other exhaust components that are ready to weld. Flowmaster has you covered.
All right, we're back here with Tim Slavens and his crew, and we're going to touch on something here. I had a question I was going to ask in regards to where you think radial tire racing is going to go. But you guys have something cooking that I think kind of tells a story, right, with a new motor vehicle that's coming out, correct?
We are actually in the process of a new car. Guess what? It's a 69 Camaro.
Shocking.
And not exactly sure when it'll hit the track just yet, but it's going to be a bit of a dual purpose car, or that's the intent for it.
And that's what I kind of find interesting, is that is the dual purpose, you know, Pro Mod radial tire thing more of a way to ensure that you have more places to race at? Because in my opinion, radial versus the world kind of it doesn't have the same luster it had, because you don't have cars like the old Wolverine and stuff like that. It's Pro Mods on radials. Is this something that you guys wanted to make sure that you had a gun to bring to the gunfight?
You pretty much hit the nail on the head, Brian. We wanted a car that could to go back to potentially, hopefully, compete with an RVW. We like racing RVW. It's a great bunch of guys. It's an elite bunch of guys, but we like being in that group. But I mean, as you said, it's no surprise that RVW around the country is shrinking, but there is there's many great series of pro mod racing going on around us in the Midwest, much closer to home kind of thing, that we'd like to, be able to race through the summer versus, spring and fall kind of thing, and be able to get out a few more trips a year and stretch our legs.
Oh, you just opened up a can of worms right there. I'm salivating to ask some questions about. Good questions. You have an awesome point there, that we were having a open round table discussion in the media center about, what would you build and why would you build it kind of deal. I'm like, I would build a pro mod. The reason being is you could spit and hit a pro mod race pretty much anywhere close to the Mississippi East on any given weekend, any given month, between Midwest, PDRA, NMCA, Northeast Pro Mod, one-off races. There are so many more opportunities for Pro Mod racing throughout the entire year, because you're not as limited with the radial tire, right?
100%. And it's even gotten back to the testing of the RVW car. We've got to travel several hours to get to a facility that can provide a surface for us to test on radials. When a slick tired car, a couple hours from home, we can be ready to test on a good facility, or at a good facility. So we're kind of excited about the opportunity to be able to race with those guys. There is we got lots and lots of friends around home that are pro mod racers, so we'll get to, race with our friends, so to speak. We get to race a little closer to home so friends and family can actually get to come see the car instead of having to drive 15, 16, 18 hours for us to potentially go compete and anybody to come watch. So we're pretty excited about the opportunity. And there's a lot nowadays. It's obviously not about the money because, you don't make any money on this deal, but there's a lot of pro mod races that pay really big purses, similar to the radial racing now. So if you're just chasing the money, there's plenty of opportunity to put your hat in the ring for those.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing is that if you still want to go do radial versus the world, if there are those big pot races, the class is open where you can put the radials on it and get to do that whole deal. But to me, looking at the tea leaves, it just seems like that all of a sudden slick tire cars are starting to. Everybody said slick tire racing's dead, and I said, don't ever say that. Don't ever count them out, because the ability to put on a race during the heat of the day, whenever, and there's a lot of options, especially with pro mods, because no, it might not be as fast. However, it will be just as competitive, and you'll see a lot of cool cars.
Very much so. It's a huge commitment for these track owners, track preppers, track promoters to put on a radial race in today's environment. It's a very intensive endeavor, a very expensive endeavor for them to do so. So it's easy to see why the opportunities for radial race is starting to dwindle, because it's quite honestly, it's just a lot easier to put on a slick tire race than it is a radial race.
And I think the problem is that some people will see those as combative statements, and it's not dog and radials. It's just the facts are facts that people have a very short attention spans because of these things right here. And you need to be able to keep them entertained, and they don't want to sit there and watch tractors go up and down the track to see a couple fast passes. Whereas at a slick tire race, let's say something like the Midwest Pro Mod Series, you got top sportsman, top dragster, alcohol funny cars, and pro mods. You don't have to spend hours prepping the track, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, giving it a good scrape, and then you're right back at it.
Right. No, I'm not dogging either side. And in fact, we talked a while ago, the radial car is so much easier to drive, so much smoother to drive. We prefer radial racing, but we simply just don't get enough opportunity to race of RVW style car as much as we don't get to be out as much as we'd like to be out.
Look at poor Roger Holder. He's got to leave his stuff out on the East Coast to come get races, because there's doesn't seem like anything happening on the West Coast anymore, unfortunately, let alone radial racing.
Right.
And I think it's going to be interesting. Like I said, that the cool thing about what you're building is that if, I don't know how close you are to Marty Chance's track, but if he says, hey, I want to put on an 8-car door slammer shootout, you want to stop out get some testings, make a little bit of cheddar, that'd be fun for you guys to show up and be like the biggest stars of the show, right?
Sure. And it's funny you mentioned that, because it's just 30 minutes from home for us. So,
yeah. And the reason why I kind of use that as an example is because here in Ohio, we're very blessed with having so many tracks locally that I don't understand why more track owners and operators don't do that, where they'll book in on a Saturday when you got, your Super Series bracket race, bring in 8 to 16 pro mods to put on a show, because guess what? People will pay $15 to watch a day of, some bracket racing with some fast pro mods.
Absolutely.
And it gives the racers a chance to, you're always probably, I'm sure you wouldn't turn down the opportunity to get some data, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great opportunity for that.
I think that would just, really kind of help the sport in general and kind of keep things, going. Now, our time here is coming to a close, and I always like to throw fun questions at my guests. We do time machine questions, unlimited bank account questions, kinds of scenarios. I kind of like to torture my guests. I like to make them think, make them squirm, and have some fun. For you, Tim, the question is, radial cars have been banned from the planet Earth. And now I know you got the Pro Mod 2. We'll even say Pro Mods, big tire cars, can't run them anymore. What class would you try to race, and why would you race it? You could pick anything.
Well, you know, I hate to bring it up and people will throw stones, but the no prep racing is becoming very, very popular. We don't know anything about it, but it's kind of intriguing to some point to see what we could possibly do in that field. So I would guess if the other two options were off the board, would probably race.
And you know what? That's not a bad option because I've been to several no prep races. I wanted to go to Outlaw Armageddon this year, but unfortunately that couldn't happen. I am willing to bet you guys would have a lot of fun in a no prep race across the board because it's definitely it's an art and a science to get fast cars down that track, especially the races you see where it's, you know, reverse end racing, where it's on bare pavement, where the most horsepower doesn't always win. It takes a team and some smart people to get really fast cars down that surface.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to throw this out there a while ago when we were talking about the radial setup. You know, I think the other thing that has helped us be successful along the way is Mark and Joe are they have one focus and priority, and that's racing our lane.
Yes.
You know, what will the lane take? And granted, the guy beside us may be quicker than us, but kind of our motto is we don't step outside of our box. You know, if we don't have data to go there, they're, you know, 99.9% chance they're not going to try something, and we're going to put something in the car that we know is tried and true and proven. So, you know, I do feel like that they're very good about racing the surface and how much will the surface hold. So that's another reason that I think it would be kind of fun to watch them tackle the no prep style racing.
It's definitely interesting because everybody thinks it's easy till they try to do it, especially the true scrape down no prep stuff where 5,000 horsepower is going to get you in more trouble than what good it's going to give you. And that's the truth. I've seen a lot of guys, you know, run out of talent and real estate thinking all that horsepower and that scramble button is going to save them, when clearly when they hit that scramble button and, you know, the car decides it doesn't want to play nice anymore and bad stuff happens. Mm-hmm. Now, I also find it interesting you say that they don't try to put anything into the car, that they don't, you know, you race your lane. You know, so what I guess you're saying is that Mark and Joe don't have the little file folder for the tune-up that says, hold my beer, watch this.
I wouldn't say that.
So that file does exist.
It does. When we went to Bowling Green, I think it was 3 years ago for Tyler's race, you know, they had the home run derby for the last round of qualifying on Friday night. And we'd dropped a lifter or something in the motor the round before. And, you know, the guys, we were changing the motors in it. And, you know, it was getting down to crunch time, like we weren't going to make it. And I was still helping on the car. And Joe comes over and asks me what tune-up we want to put in it. I was like, well, we're not going to go to the home run derby and bunt. So whatever the fastest thing we had, let's put that back in it. So, and that's what we ended up doing, and things worked out like it was supposed to. But yeah, we do still have a folder that's got some tune-ups like that in it.
So it's I've seen some people call it the spicy folder, the spicy tune-ups, you know, just you always got those in the side pocket, right?
Yeah, don't tell Tim. That's what we named the folder.
Don't, stay out of that folder. Stay out of that folder.
Do not open.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you don't want to call it that because you know, it's automatically, well, why don't I want to open it? Then you open it. We used to name our tune-ups based on sometimes depending on who you're racing. We always joke we had the Jason Lee tune-up when we'd have to race him because you'd always have to you got to bring it to the table when you're racing 5-head. So we'd have to go to the Jason Lee tune-up and make sure we had something extra fast for him and that 5-head.
Joe's always got a term he uses. You'll know that ththings are probably going to be exciting when he says, it should be sporty.
It should be sporty. Yeah, that's when you sit there and go, all right, well, definitely going to have to knuckle up and pay attention, right?
Exactly.
Well, Tim, it's been awesome to have you on the show. And at this point, I like to turn it over to my guests so they can channel their inner John Force and thank all their sponsors, thank the people they need to thank, tell people what they got going on, tell people, where to go. And in this case, I think I will add in the caveat that sometimes if you start to forget people, you can tell them to go to your Facebook page or website where, you got people to thank as well, because you don't want to leave out any sponsors. So I know that's a lot. I'll turn it over to you. And just, it's your chance to do your Academy Award speech.
Thanks, Brian. I'll ramble on here for a minute, and then I'll let these guys pick up whoever I forget. But we have a really good group of folks on board. Dave and Daniel Campbell at Design Performance do our engine work. Mark Mickey's shop, M&M Transmission, takes care of our transmission duties. You mentioned Marty Chance a while ago. He takes care of our converter end of the business. Can't do it without Mark Mincer and Mincer Motorsports. Titled race cars for the chassis and tuning he puts in. Of course, Joe at Hyperactive is critical to our success. M-Tron for our ACU engine management program. Oh gosh, Brian, I'm going to forget somebody and be upset, but we have an awesome group of owners that give us the opportunity to play at this level. Matt and Anita Zimmerman and Mark Michael, they're you can't ask for a better group of people to work for and with on that end of the spectrum. And I hate saying but I'm pausing because I know I forgot somebody. But our Facebook page is, what is it, Paul?
Wolverine 2.0.
Wolverine 2.0, and that's probably not going to be the name of the new car.
Good thing is you can change it if needed.
Right.
And we got to thank all these guys behind us and beside us too. We couldn't do it without those guys, and we've had to schedule some stuff around when they're available, and the loyalty that they give us, we give them back. So we couldn't do it without those guys, and don't want to do it without those guys. I'm kind of one of those that falls under that later this year. I've got a daughter that's getting married in October, so we're going to have to miss a big race. But at the same time, it opens up some windows for some other kind of racing. So, we kind of had our heads down about that at first, but then we start looking at other stuff, and it's like, well, that may be a blessing, because now instead of going to two races, we've got 5 or 6 other races that we can go to instead. So it was a little bit of a downer at first, but in the end, and it's going to get us well prepared for the very end of this year and the beginning of next year.
Awesome to see you guys doing so well. And I've got to thank my sponsors that let me come on here and have fun and talk to guys like you: Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Fuel Air Spark Technology, Eldebrock, Manley, JE Pistons, and Dart. Tim, it was awesome to have you on the show and your whole crew on the show. When you said you wanted to have your crew on and do it on vacation, I was like, I dig this, because again, it shows in the drag racing world how we operate as a unit and a team, and how dedicated you guys are to each other as a band of horsepower brothers. It's awesome, man. This people should take note of. This is how you're supposed to do it.
Well, there's one word there, one adjective you left out that I probably have to call out, and it's more family.
Yes. Family operation, because that's again something with you see you guys at the track, your family is there. It's a family operation. You operate as such. I've seen your owners at the track, everybody there, and you guys represent yourselves so well. It's awesome to see.
And sometimes it's a dysfunctional family, but we still love everybody.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with being Roseanne, the Barr family, on the TV show, right? They were popular.
Yeah.
Gotta have that little bit of fun and space. Not everything's, leave it to Beaver, right?
That's right. Right. We want to take the opportunity to say thank you for inviting us and having us on the show as well.
No, it was awesome. You know, again, I've got a super secret list of people that that we try to have on the show, and you've been on that list since the beginning. I was like, all right, now it's time to try to get Tim on. It's just like I said, it's the bonus to have everybody on the show. It's to me, it's fun. It's an honor, man.
We greatly appreciate what you do and do for the racers and do for the events as well.
You know, I'm very blessed and fortunate to be a fan that has a fun job. It's a job, it's a lot of work, but I get to tell the stories of all the racers, and you know, it makes it worth it in the end.
Sure.
But it was awesome to have you guys on. I'm looking forward to seeing the new car out on the track, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.